Hello and welcome back to the Smokey Scale. On the 17th episode, I'll be taking a look at Joji's newest album, Smithereens, which is 9 tracks in length and around 25 minutes long. With most of the production and writing not being done by Joji himself, this project interests me in the way that it feels almost as if Joji was obligated to do this album by 88 Rising because of the lack of writing or production credits. Not only that, I also have to take into account the level of quality compared to past records such as Nectar and Ballads 1. Nectar obviously being very overfluffed and being inferior to Ballads 1. The hope I have for this album going in is that the production is never overdone and the songs at least have loads of replayability in them. Another thing I'm wanting from this album is better production and better vocal performances by Joji himself. In other words, I want to hear something improved from his past works with vocal ranges we've never heard from him at all. But going in noting that, let's finally get into the review. Track 1 is Glimpse of Us, the very first single Joji released for Smithereens. Now it's no doubt that this song is extremely popular, even surpassing some of the songs he's released in the past on Spotify, and I can understand why. The slow, simple piano chords playing in the background are soothing, calm, but give off a saddening tone that would make you reminisce and get emotional over it. His vocals are soothing and have no imperfections that make it bad, and the production overall is better than most of the songs on Nectar. While I did wish Joji had more credit on this song besides just being a performer of it, Glimpse of Us gets a 10 out of 10. Track 2 is Feeling Like the End, which has Joji as a writer and, at least to me, has a sort of mix of the production found on both Ballads 1 and Nectar, with the more lo-fi sounds and pop sounds clashing together, which comes together to create a simple lo-fi bop. This song was a little more underwhelming for me in comparison to the previous track, however, it is still a high on the album. Feeling Like the End gets an 8 out of 10. Track 3 is Die For You, which is probably my favorite off of the album entirely, and is a song that holds an immense amount of replayability for me, even without writing or production credits from Joji. The sound is immediately very somber and depressing, but is varied in the way it progresses throughout by adding kicks and all sort of things that make the lo-fi production much more successful. As well, with the chorus being catchy, the song genuinely beats Glimpse of Us for me, and for the first time ever on the Smokey Scale series, I'm going to give it an 11 out of 10, simply for just being an amazing song overall, and I'm really hope he carries over this type of production onto his next project. Even if the rumors of him coming back as Pink Eye comes true, I still want him to continue with the amazing production on these sorts of tracks, which is just such a natural evolution of the sound on his works like Ballads 1. Track 4, Before the Day Is Over, and like track 2, it's a more simple production that sort of acts as an interlude into the next better produced song. It's slow, calming, and soothing, but a little bit more energetic than the previous tracks as well. I am more and more reminded of this being a production mix to the sounds of Nectar and Ballads 1, because that's the way it sounds to me at least. Not that it's bad, but I do think it could be better. Before the Day Is Over gets a 6 out of 10. Track 5 is Dissolve, the only full acoustic song on Smithereens. While it incorporates the sort of sounds found on both Ballads 1 and Nectar, it is a different sound than what we've heard from Joji as the guitar plays in the background. As for how I feel about this song, it's the only one I could kind of visualize as walking through a windy desert alone, filled with both happiness and depression at the same time. As an ending track to the first disc, did I really just say that? Disc on the record. I think it does a good job, but it's unfortunately slightly worse than Glimpse of Us and Die For You, but it's still better than track 2 or 4. Dissolve gets an 8 out of 10. Moving on to the second disc, starting with track 6, which is called Night Rider, which is co-written by Joji and is the only song on the record which is fully produced by him. This is by far one of the best tracks on the album, as it gives an immediately different sound than the previous 5 tracks we've seen on the album already. You can simply tell it's a production by him as well, with it managing to produce a simple but varied production that might as well be a part of Ballads 1. Because I don't remember a single song sounding like this on Nectar. As for the lyrics on the song, it definitely is Joji writing, but that's kind of what gives it a charm at this point. It's not the best, but it is the best at the same time. Knight Rider gets a 7 out of 10. Because I find it more good than bad at this point. Track 7, Blah 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 Demo, which is a track title I have zero clue on how he got green checked by his label. This one feels the most Ballads 1 out of any of the songs on the album, and while Joji isn't a producer on this one, he is a co-writer. This one is a little repetitive to me, and it does almost feel like an afterthought, even if that is the point considering he sees it as a demo song, if that even means anything. The production is fine, but it could be way better, the lyrics are repetitive, and I don't see any replayability in it for me. This track gets a 4 out of 10. Track 8, Yukon, which is the only interlude on Smithereens and was released as a single for the album. I do like this because it does sound like a classic Joji production, but it isn't better than Knight Rider, but it isn't any worse. The production is still good, energetic, and will get someone moving for sure. All in all, it's a great interlude into possibly the second best song on the album. Yukon gets an 8 out of 10. Track 9, aka the final track, is called 1am Freestyle. And guess what? It is not a freestyle at all, with a whopping 8 different writers and 2 separate producers on it. And none of them are Joji himself. But that doesn't matter, because I still find it to be my second favorite on the entire album with catchy lyrics, a Ballads 1 type production, and possibly the best vocal performance on the entire album from him. This and Die For You is 100% the type of production I want to see remain on his future projects and be approved on, with Joji hopefully taking more of a production and writing role like he had on his past records. This is a great song and it's a great ending to the album. 1am Freestyle gets a 10 out of 10. Now, with all the songs aside, let's take a look at the verdict of Smithereens. All in all, how does Smithereens fare in comparison to his previous albums? Well, this album probably has his highest moments ever on an album. However, the questionable choice of a lack of production and writer role on the project makes me think Joji wasn't very motivated to complete this project, receiving help from 88 Rising, which is his record label. There are definitely some great production moments I want repeated on his future album or EP, but there are also some that aren't as great as they could be. None of these songs are bad in their own right, and that's what makes this record special to me, is that it's almost entirely perfect and is way better than Nectar was. Another thing I want to mention is that Joji could have hit much more interesting vocal ranges, but with this record, it seemed as if he wanted to keep it safe and not take any risks. I'm hoping he goes out of his comfort zone for this sort of thing on his next record. For the final rating of Smithereens by Joji, I'm going to give it an 80% on the Smokey scale, which is 20% higher than what I gave Nectar, and is 10% higher than what I gave Ballads 1. It is nearly perfect, but still has a lot of imperfections that hold it back, and before you say I think it's better than Ballads 1, I think Ballads 1 is good within its own right and is the backbone for where Joji came from. It's on its own level, just like Nectar. Anyways, that's about it. See ya.